question on the same. Final question on the same table, line, letter L. Does this, if I have already developed an affordable project and I've gotten my tax credits and I'm 3 years down the road, would this have some effect on me, or is this only on new projects? So the wording is unclear, so whether this is on new projects or would actually be retroactive to old projects.
Would definitely not be retroactive, and that's the intent. It's a little bit of a complicated section, but the point being, if you have some executed document, a covenant, or a funding agreement from the city or something like that, we would you could develop under the agreed upon terms of that document. But it needs to, that section needs to, like the title, I think, will be changed slightly. But it needs to address who gets to go under the old rules and who gets to go under the new rules. And so what we're saying is that if somebody has an approved tech doc or has at least one residential building permit, then they can go under the new rules. And so, usually in the past, the old rules have been more beneficial to a developer. They want to stick with the old rules. Well, in this case, they would probably want to go to the new rules. So essentially, that probably needs a little bit of work, but we want to clarify, because obviously developers want to know, can I choose which set of rules I go under? At what point am I bound by the new rules or bound by the old rules? And so that's just what that is all about, just trying to clarify that.
Great. Okay, that's the end of my questions. I'll save a comment for later. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark. ML, you have your hand up.
Yeah, Sarah, I know you wanted to, I have one. I didn't realize we were asking some of the specifics. Can I go ahead and ask? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Yeah.
So Michelle, I'm looking at that same part number 4. I'm looking at E, the land dedication.
Yeah.
So it's kind of confusing. Here's what
Yeah.
I understand, and correct me where I'm wrong, because obviously I feel like I'm not understanding it. It's saying that basically that if the land can be reasonably developed for affordable housing, then the CIL equals the difference between the appraised value of the land and 50% of applicable CIL. I mean,
yeah, so it's two different things. And so let me talk about the land dedication. We split it up into 2 sections because it was so long. So that's been an option in the inclusionary housing program since day one. So for 23 years, we've only ever had 2 land dedications. One was fairly complicated, I would say. It was Fraser Meadows, so it was a senior project, and those are always complicated for the program to deal with. But then the most recent was Diagonal Plaza, where they dedicated land, and BHP then took over the land and will build an affordable project. So we learned a lot about the land dedication from Diagonal Plaza. And so this is essentially just sort of tightening up the code language around the land dedication so it's clearer. There are some things that are unclear. But as far as the value, it says right now that the value has to be 75% of the applicable cash in lieu in order for us to accept the land. But we talked a lot about that internally. Well, what if somebody just wanted to dedicate land that would only accommodate a 4-plex? Would we want that land? There are certainly scenarios where we would say that would be a great piece of property to have. We could do some for-sale units on it, even though it might not cover their whole requirement. So we didn't want to limit the value of the land to be dedicated in the way that it is in the code right now. And so we decided that probably the best way to handle that would be this sort of generic term of the city must determine the land can be reasonably developed for affordable housing. And so that we can take a look at whatever land they're proposing and say, do we have a project that would work there? Something that would make sense for the location or the size of the land, and not limit it to some size of land that is honestly just sort of arbitrary. So that's what that is about. And then essentially what it says right now is that the land would be appraised, and then if the land is equal or more valuable than the cash in lieu, then they don't pay any cash in lieu. But if it's less than the cash in lieu, they have to pay the difference. Okay. And so essentially we want to make sure that we get some cash. So we're going to get a piece of land, but no money to develop it. And so what we want in this land dedication is a piece of land and some money to develop the land. And so that's what this is trying to kind of say, that, you know, you can give us a piece of land, but if the, but the cash in lieu, you know, and it could be valued at some amount, but you would still need to give us at least 50% of the cash in lieu. So it would be whichever is larger, the difference between the land value and cash in lieu, or 50% of the cash in lieu. So in other words, it guarantees that we would get 50% of the cash in lieu to develop the piece of land. We might end up with a smaller piece of land that way, but we're going to get some money to develop the land. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm not sure that it reads that way. I understand what you're saying. I'm not sure that it,
so it would say that you would have cash in lieu associated with the land dedication.
correct.
And the cash in lieu would be the difference between the appraised value of the land and the amount of cash in lieu. That's what's missing in there. Or 50% of the applicable cash in lieu, whichever is larger. So there is a little piece missing. Thank you for catching that. We'll clean that up a little bit.
My mind was going around in circles.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Thank you for clarifying.
Mm-hmm.
All right, ML, any other questions? No, okay. So Kurt, why don't you ask your last couple of questions, and then we will have the public comment period, and then we'll have our discussion or specific recommendations we might have for staff. And it'd be great if we could ultimately wrap up by 10 o'clock, which is an hour from now.
Sounds great, and thanks, ML, for raising that. Yeah, I was confused by that. I have a question about item A in the code changes. So my understanding is we're talking about getting rid of the 80% tier and putting in a 50% tier. That seems like a really significant change. And wouldn't that leave the people who between 60 and 80% who are currently eligible for the system, wouldn't it leave them out in the cold?
Well, so this is for rentals.
Right.
So let me think of how to approach this. So right now we have 80% of the required affordable units, which there's 25%, right? So the 20% and the 5%, right? 60% AMI, and then a smaller amount, whether you look at it as 5 or 20%, but it's, you know, for 80%. 80% is higher than is typically allowed in affordable rentals. And so what you would anticipate for on-site rentals, because rentals by and large pay cash in lieu. It's very different than ownership. Ownership, they're going to just sell the unit, the affordable unit, and then they're out of it. They don't have to deal with the affordable stuff anymore after that, right? The developer. But with rentals, they're going to hold on to the thing and they're going to own it and they're going to manage it. And it's a much bigger commitment because it's permanent. It's a permanent commitment to having these affordable rentals on site. And so rentals, by and large, are going to pay cash. And when they don't, they're going to subsidize the cost of the rentals with getting low-income housing tax credits. Well, low-income housing tax credits don't allow 80% rentals. So what the conversations we've had in the past is with developers is they're like, well, I'm not going to do the 80% because I can't use LIHTC to finance it. So I know this is getting a little bit more detailed than maybe you want to hear, but it turns out that exactly 80% tier is not very functional. And so we want to replace it with the 50% tier, would provide some deeper affordability. And in fact, when a developer goes to get that additional financing for this affordable, so think of think of Celestial Seasonings, perfect example. You know, they kind of carved out a project, they're doing separate financing on that project. They go in for that additional financing. They actually need lower income units to make it attractive to the additional financing. So it actually just fits the model for a for a funded on-site affordable rental project. And all the rest of them are going to pay cash in lieu. They're not going to put rentals on site if they don't get this additional funding to do it. Doesn't make any sense.
That was very helpful.
Mhm.
So just to clarify my understanding, these people between 60% and 80% AMI that I was worried about, they're not really being served by the on-site units currently. Is that for in general?
Yeah,
Because they're not, those generally are not being built.
they're actually being built by the market, or they're in the market with existing older rental projects. So 60% AMI rents are starting to push up against not new construction, but rents that you can find in the market in older rental projects. So there's a competition that we just don't want to get into. That's just another reason not to do 80% rentals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. That was very helpful. My one other question is about item I. So my understanding is currently if you're building single family detached dwelling units, which we don't have that many of anymore, but we're saying that currently the affordable units have to be single family detached.
Right.
And we're saying to allow them to be attached townhomes. My question is, attached townhomes generally are going to be less valuable than single family houses. People value having space around them, right? So is there a way to ensure that we're still getting if we're getting attached townhomes, they're still going to be of equivalent value to the single family homes that we would currently be getting?
Well, I'd start out by saying we don't get single family homes
Yeah.
because they're so valuable, nobody's going to do them. So that's one thing. This is sort of related to the idea of making it more financially feasible to put middle income for sale units on site. If you allow them a townhome product instead of a single family home, it does reduce their costs and make it so it's a little bit more of an incentive to help out a project that, but I mean, think about how many projects we've ever had with single family homes. Not too many, and they tend to go straight to the cash in lieu. There's not even a conversation about putting them on site. And again, this is just sort of the sweeten the deal to say, you don't have to take those valuable single family homes and make them affordable. We will accept townhomes, which is a great product. We would love to get, like, we don't get townhomes. So if this would help anybody make the decision to do townhomes as the affordable product, it would be great. Sorry, my cat loves Zoom calls.
Okay.
So it just gives some flexibility. And then the other piece of it is we don't really want to encourage more single family homes. So if they had a project of, say, 50 single family homes and they wanted to do, 7 or 8 of them as a string of townhomes, that would probably be a pretty good outcome for the program.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just follow up on your question and Michelle's answer? Are these in any way deed restricted, or is this a one-time affordable option and then someone buys it and 10 years later sells it at market rate?
You mean this particular line item or just in general?
In general,
It's a permanent deed restriction that every resale needs to be an affordable purchaser at an affordable price. They're permanently, yes.
I just wanted to be clear on that. Okay, thank you. And Laura, you'll be our last questioner, and then we'll move on.
Thank you. I have just one question. 5 seconds. Michelle, what's your cat's name?
His name is Spartacus, but we call him Sparky.
Spartacus. I love it. Sparky. Thank you.
All right, so thank you all. Staff, don't go anywhere far from your TV, from your computers, because we will probably come back to you, but let's go ahead and take public comment now. If there is anyone who wants to comment, and then we'll, I think, following comment, I think my suggestion will be that we just sort of go around the table, and if people have thoughts they want to share with staff, to share them, and we'll let staff move forward from there, because we don't have anything to vote on. And all right, so Amanda, and we've lost.
It's just me.
Okay, so okay, Amanda, please go ahead.
Yeah, if there's anybody that would like to speak at this time, please raise your hand.
Do we have anyone?
Yes, it looks like we have Lynn Siegel.
Okay.
Lynn, hold on just one moment. Let me fix this here so that you can speak.
That's it, just me, right?
You're the only one with the hand raised at the moment, Lynn, but I'll start the timer for you.
I think the planning board has a problem here. I'm the only person that ever speaks at your meetings on the things that everyone in town complains about constantly. And I'm not that smart on this stuff. I'm not that good. You know, you've got my ganglia going in circles on this stuff. And I think fundamentally there's some basic problems. I'm glad Michelle, I think, has great ideas, but I think that the general, there's some general presuppositions, and that is that smaller is cheaper, which it's not. Smaller is much more expensive. Bigger is cheaper. 4,500 foot is the perfect size. 9 people, the size for 1 washer and dryer, 2 or 3 refrigerators, multiple theme rooms, common space, car use, and great open space. That's communal. That's what happens in a big space. And this program, for one thing, bringing it down to 12%, first of all, makes it a lot less cash in lieu, might make it more desirable for more people to do middle income for sale, but it's only 12%. So that trade-off has to be quantified. You know, maybe I'm not smart enough to figure out how it quantifies, but it just seems like there's some assumptions in this, like that, and maybe it's true, and I'm not in finance, I'm an ultrasound technologist, but it seems like, why is it that these all have to be for sale, the townhomes? Why can't they be for rent? And there has to be more of a discussion in the community to where my questions can be answered, because this is a one-way discussion. And I'm stupid in this area, but I have some ideas and I'd like them to be manifest. And I'd like to argue with some people about why things are happening, but it's not iterative. It's just me talking for 3 minutes. And like, from the things that I was speaking about earlier, I got to one on my list of about 20 different things that I've taken notes on. And it feels like pretty futile. Boy. Parking is a lot better with you know, when you have, I don't know how you do it. Okay. I really don't. But I think there needs to be some kind of subsidy to influence architects to design these communal spaces as mainstream living for
Lynn, thank
cheaper.
you, Lynn, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but thank you very much. You went over your 3 minutes. And we share your frustration that we're not hearing from more of the public, to be totally honest. And I think it's because we're still not meeting in person. I think that has a lot to do with it. That being said, Thank you, Amanda. We will now go to our feedback to staff. And again, I think what I'd like to suggest, you don't have to follow my suggestion, but in the hopes of actually wrapping up by 10, is if you have specific feedback, give it, and Michelle and team will take it into under advisement. And if you hear someone say something that you agree with, just say, I concur with board member X. So we'll go around, I'll go around the table and call on you, and so nobody feels I'm picking and choosing here. I'll start with Kurt. So Kurt, why don't you go first?
Thanks. I think that this is a great project. I'm supportive of all of it. I'm especially supportive of going to a per square foot cash in lieu. I think that that's something that I've thought would be a good idea for a long time. And so I'm very, very excited to see that. And I'm very excited to see item 3, the Nexus study for replacement of single family houses or additions. You know, we got to me, there's a clear nexus, not being the person doing the study, but to me, there's a clear nexus that bigger and more expensive houses attract people who have higher demand of services and put a greater demand on the affordable housing resources in the city. So my guess is that it'll be a pretty straightforward nexus to find. So I'm supportive of that. I was concerned, I guess, about the reduction in the from 15%, from 25% to 15% in item 2, but I think that you explained it well and that is justified. And I had concerns about some of the other items in the code changes, but you alleviated those concerns too. So I'm supportive of it all.
All right, thank you, Kurt. Lisa, I'll call you next.
I think I support this project. I think staff and the consultants have put a lot of thought into trying to address it. It doesn't address everything, perfectly the way we think it maybe could or should, but I know that means that we'll just keep working on it and trying to improve it further. So I think other planning board members will have more to say, but I would just say I'm broadly supportive of the efforts. It makes sense to me that this is very complex and that sometimes we think we're incentivizing something and we're not really. And so I kind of defer to what the data is actually telling us. And I'm excited to see where it goes next. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. ML, I'll call on you.
Thank you. Sarah, are we just talking to question number 1?
Actually, I'm just suggesting that whatever comments you have or suggestions, recommendations, that now is the time to give them. And I'll go back through the circle one more time after everyone's had a first go around.
Okay, great. I will concur with mostly Kurt on number 1. I think the 1 through 4 have been addressed and are very well spoken to by staff. On number 2, the input I would have, and I don't know if this is possible, but here is my thought. Would there be a means for the cash in lieu money to be available to affordable deeded properties that are ADUs and multi-units on upzoned single-family parcels? When I look at, we just had the zoning updates to open up more opportunities for plexes, and of course ADUs have been on the availability for a while now. One of the things, because these are generally owner developed, one of the deterrents is financing. And it seems that if an owner is ready and willing to deed something into an affordable bucket, is there any means for using some of that cash in lieu money into that unit type? the small, and I'm guessing at some point when we develop plexes, maybe there's the opportunity to sell them as well. So that would, you know, even fully buy into or pay into the middle income housing for sale market. But that to me is one of the big deterrents for that product type to contribute significantly to affordable units in established neighborhoods where the infrastructure exists, amenity-rich areas. And I see again and again that the deterrent is affording to have the money to do the development, even if it's a small ADU. Interest rates are high, and you know people get worried. People who tend to own these are older residents that have been there for a while, and they're hesitant to get into a big mortgage. But I just think that that could be a possible solution to get more of that housing type. Any possibility, Michelle, of that ever?
You know, I'll let Jay address that. He's more
Hmm.
plugged into the funding side of things.
Well, let's start with ADUs. So, well, as you know, so ADUs are accessory to a primary dwelling unit, right? So it's not considered a separate unit, and the way that we get affordable units there is through the declaration of use, right? So in exchange for certain benefits for the ADU, they get to, to the larger size or not providing parking, they have to sign the declaration of use. That's how they get their affordability. But I see where you're going with the plexes. The challenge is that IH is really a tool for new development. And you really need a certain scale to get those units, affordable units on site. So it doesn't work very well for small projects. So that's why small projects, they always pay cash. So they basically make their contribution, and then we use that money and leverage it for other funds. That doesn't mean that we can't think about using cash funds for people that want to convert, say, a single family home into a triplex or a duplex, provide some sort of subsidy. I think it's an intriguing idea. It's not within the scope of this project, though.
I just wanted to put it out there to get it on people's radar, because making the changes that we're looking at to try to create zoning opportunities to look at upzoning some of these single family areas. It just seems like there might be a way this is a holistic way of, okay, what are the other pieces that are missing? And I think financing is one of them. So thank you.
Yep, appreciate that question.
Thanks, ML. Mark, and then Laura, and then me.
Yeah, I want to thank staff for this. That was a great presentation, and although complex and a little over my head in certain spots, I think this whole project is excellent, and it speaks to, when I looked at the timeline, I thought, wow, this is pretty nimble, and for a project of this undertaking, anyway, it feels nimble to me. So I commend you for that. My only other request would be, is something I've mentioned in the past, and that is some way to, Sarah pointed out that we have done this really great job of distributing affordable housing as a product of cash in lieu throughout the city, and most of it is kind of hidden. It blends in so well. It's not apparent that this is affordable. It's not so it blends in. And I would urge us, whether it's in our water bills or in the magazine that seems to come out at random times, the city magazine, to publicize and feature what has been the product of the Cash in Lieu program, because the trope on social media, the trope on the campaign trail dating way back and including this cycle, is developers get away with paying a little bit of money and they get to do whatever they want. And it's like, no one says, oh, these units here were a product of this cash and lieu. So I would just urge that we kind of blow our own horn a little bit about the product that we have that we've done, because I think we've done a good job with it, and I thank your efforts for it.
Thanks,
Can I
Mark.
just respond real quick? I mean,
Yes, of course, Jay.
I think it's an excellent suggestion, of course, and I think Kurt had a similar idea. So every time we brought something housing related to council, he highlighted a specific project and tried to personalize it. So he told the story about the people actually living in that affordable home and how it changed their lives. So I agree. I think we need to bring that back and do more of it. But also any other suggestions you have. And we're doing an affordable housing bike tour. So we'll extend an invitation once we have a date to the full board as well. It's a good way for you to see all the different projects that are out there, because I get surprised too. It's like,
Well, if I'm here, I'll go on it again. I went on it last year, and I urge every board member to get out there and ride along and visit all these projects. It was super educational.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Laura?
Thank you. So I'll try not to repeat. I agree with the supportive comments. I think staff have just hit it out of the park with this one. You may recall when we first started talking about the inclusionary housing update, and there was this focus on middle income housing, I got a little clutchy and I was like, why are we focusing on middle income when it takes so much more money to develop that I didn't want it to be a dividing the pie, and a bigger slice goes to middle and a smaller slice goes to low income. And I think staff have solved that problem beautifully with looking at the on-site construction of middle income homes. And I think that that's a really great idea for a lot of reasons. And one that hasn't been mentioned tonight is that if you are putting on-site units into a condo project or a development that has an HOA, one of the problems that we've seen in the past is that the HOA fees are dictated, of course, by the whole HOA that is dominated by market rate people who can afford more. And so the HOA fees tend to escalate and become unaffordable to people who are low and moderate income. And if the people who are on site are actually middle income buyers rather than low and moderate, then they are more likely to be able to afford those HOA fees in that development. So that hasn't been mentioned, but I think that that's a really nice fringe benefit of the way that staff have constructed this program. I could say so much. I don't want to take our time tonight. I do want to point out one other thing that hasn't been talked about in addition to all the wonderful things that have been talked about, which is this item D in the chart about land dedication. And Sarah, you told me once, I want to credit you for this. You told me once, sometimes when we see a project, we see something that concerns us and we bring it up to staff, and maybe we can't fix it right then and there in that project because that project is being constructed under current rules, but staff are listening and they will come back to us sometime in the future with a code update that will address that problem for the future. And I think that that has been done here for the land dedication. You folks may remember with Diagonal Plaza, we raised the concern about that the on-site units did not have access to some of the open space that the market rate unit tenants did have access to, even though that open space was being counted as open space for the whole project under one site review. It didn't sit well. And there were all kinds of reasons why that might have been the right thing to go forward with for Diagonal Plaza. But in this code update, staff have fixed that and said that if there's a land dedication and it goes through one site review, all of the amenities have to be for all tenants or all of the owners. And if they are not going to do that, it has to be two separate site reviews, and that's in item D. So I think that didn't get talked about tonight, but that was something that fixed a problem that we saw. Maybe it's a very small problem, but I want to credit staff for listening and for resolving that. So I will stop there and just say kudos to staff. Thank you so much. And I'm very happy to support this project for many, many reasons.
I'll go last. I'll basically support what everyone else has said. I do have one thing I would hope that the Nexus study would touch on. One of the things that's concerning me with the number of with the various proposals and ordinances that have come before us in the last couple of years that have to do with affordability, but don't actually guarantee affordability, is that the pressure it puts on the price of houses that aren't in any of these programs, whether it's an increase in the number of people who can occupy a house, and so that increases the value of the house because the rental income can go up, or whether it's because we are supporting duplexes and triplexes on larger lots, which then might encourage investors to come in and scoop up some land and build triplexes and sell them for a lot of money, versus actually producing housing that is smaller houses that presumably will be more affordable. So I just want to make sure, I would like to suggest that when you do the Nexus study, one of the lines that you pursue is what are the potential impacts on housing prices above the middle income frame? Because I think we just need to know if what we're doing is putting upward pressure on housing that's already very expensive. And I realize that a goal of ours, and I support this goal, is to fill in that middle ground between the two ends of our current housing. But I don't think we want to end up with also having our, median housing price go from the 1.7 million it is today to 2.5, insofar as, at least through policies, versus whatever the market can bear. So again, I'm not an economist. I don't know econometrics, but I would hope that that's at least the question that's part of your scope for the Nexus study.
Well, you do have an economist that you could ask that question.
Do I have an economist who can answer that question?
I think you do. You
I
have.
bet I can find one.
He's on the screen right in front of you, David.
Excellent, David. So I guess I'm directing this to you, David. So that's
Well,
my own. I'm sorry.
So I guess I would start answering your question, just framing how these Nexus studies typically work, which is, I think, might be, I guess, so I've done like 40 of these affordable housing Nexus studies for residential projects, and and a couple of them that are for condo conversions, where you convert from a rental and then sell that rental unit to condo buyers, and then you calculate a fee based on that difference in sort of the income of the condo buyer and all the spending of the condo buyer on different goods and services and the jobs that supports and the affordable housing needs of the workers who hold those jobs. So it's these studies are driven by jobs created by the households who live in the market rate units and the affordable housing needs of those workers. That's sort of how they've traditionally been done. Here, the way you frame this question is a little bit different. It's if we build a market rate, or at maybe a certain type of market rate housing, is that contributing to just market pressure on other units? I think that's sort of where you were going with that.
Not where I was going with it, because I'm not explaining myself very clearly. The market in Boulder produces extremely expensive houses, even small ones. Like we have made an assumption that smaller is cheaper, and that may be true. I'm sure it's true in the kind of places I grew up in, Cleveland, Ohio, but I'm just not convinced personally that it's true in Boulder, where we have limited land. But I'm willing to throw the dice, but I'd like to understand it insofar as if it's possible within the scope of the Nexus study, at least to try to keep an eye on what the implications are of this thing we're trying to do on the price pressure on market rate housing that is outside this circle of middle income, permanently affordable, whatever the language what language we're going to use for it. Because I just think that would be helpful to know. So and maybe it's not within the scope. This is why it's a suggestion rather than a, you know, because I don't know whether it's in the scope, but I do think it's something we need to be tracking. We need to understand whether or not all of these policies that we're passing and pursuing actually are producing housing that is more affordable to the target audiences and is not then creating a huge, even larger increase in housing prices at the top end. I realize there are people who can afford it, but I don't think we want to be having the median family house price be, you know, even much higher than it is today, because it does become problematic. Folks who make 121% of AMI. So that's my only recommendation, and you do with it what you can. Does anyone else have additional comments? If not, Laura does. Yes, Laura.
Sorry, I just want to really quickly uplift ML's idea here. I think she's put her finger on something very important, which is that if we're trying to encourage duplexes, triplexes, ADUs, sometimes people have trouble acquiring financing to do that. And they might be very willing to put another unit or two on their property, but they end up selling to a developer who tears down their home and builds the most profitable thing, which is a very large single family home. So I think ML is suggesting something that is outside the scope of this project, but it's worth thinking about for future projects of, is there a way for the city, either through inclusionary housing or some other program, to help provide financing to people who want to do those kinds of projects but can't get market rate financing? I think that's what ML was suggesting.
Okay. Yeah, and Michelle, you're about to you're saying something, but you're still on mute.
You know, this occurred to me, the CAB they had a lot of conversations around this, around trying to, because they were also presented with the zoning for affordable housing changes at the same time. The idea being to allow these sort of multifamily models where a single family is right now. And, you know, one approach that we could take to support that would be that if somebody had an option to do either a single, you know, demo a house and build a new single family home, or demo it and build a duplex or a triplex, the one way that IH could be used in that scenario is to say, if you just build a new single family home, assuming we do the Nexus study and there's a linkage fee, you're going to be subject to the linkage fee. But if you, so it's an incentive based idea, but if you actually replaced a single family home with a duplex or a triplex or a fourplex, we would actually, you know, reduce or waive the because you would pay additional cash in lieu. You have additional units, so you would have cash in lieu in those scenarios. But we could actually reduce or even waive the cash in lieu if you made that choice, the choice that we would like you to make, which is to replace the single family home with a duplex or, you know.
But you have to get, but they have to guarantee, would they have to guarantee that the units are affordable?
No, it just would encourage them to make that choice, because the question is, if you're going to take a single family home, like what would motivate you to change it into a duplex or a triplex or a fourplex? It takes money to do that, as ML pointed out, and you know, in the individual person's calculation of what they're doing, they might not be very motivated. They just want to either replace their single family home with a bigger one, but they don't want to become a landlord. They don't want to, you know, sell off property. You know, they just don't want to go down that road. And it would just be a carrot. It would to say, if you did want to replace your single family home with a duplex, then right now there's actually sort of a stick approach. You know, you're going to pay some cash in lieu on that second unit. We could sweeten that deal for them. It wouldn't make the units affordable, but to go from the model of single family home to multifamily homes on those large lots is in itself a desirable outcome, right?
Presumably, yeah. Okay, ML and then Laura, and then we're going to call the meeting and go to matters.
Thank you, Sarah. So all of this brings to mind one other thing, which hasn't come up. And as we open up the single family market to upzoning, one of the issues that could kind of derail the intent, i.e. to get more reasonably priced housing, would be if this market suddenly becomes interesting to investors. And the thing that I believe I might have put this out when we spoke about the upzoning a few weeks ago, but is there any means, mechanism, and maybe it isn't, maybe it's outside of the scope, but okay, number 2, input to the IH program. As if the IH can be applied to this, as the Nexus report might persuade, to the single family projects, would it become reasonable to require them to be owner occupied? We do that with ADUs right now, that we require the property to be owner occupied. What this essentially does, in my experience and in my estimation, is it keeps the investor out of this market. And I think it's a different mindset on why you're building this and what you expect to get out of it. Because private landowners and their pro formas, if you will, look a little bit different than people who are investing as generally speculative developers to buy either build a big single family house, which is what is happening now, right? The developers buy them, build this giant house, and are gone. As opposed to the person who had the original house being able to add an ADU or add a duplex or triplex in order to remain in the neighborhood, remain on the property. So there are different reasons why people do developments as single owners versus developers. And I think the potential to have a result be an affordable development is higher if the project is owner occupied. So I don't know if there's a mechanism for that, but I'd like to put the thinking out there so that we don't open up this market and it becomes very attractive to developers, which is what we've seen in the single family market. And it has really transformed our ability to retain the small and the affordable houses in the neighborhoods.
Thank you, ML, Laura, and then really, truly, we're going to wrap up.
I just want to say really quickly, we talked about some of this at the HAB meeting where I'm the liaison, and with the affordability provisions especially. And I think the thing that convinced me that that's not a road to go down is that what's the alternative? And the alternative is if we put a lot of restrictions on the duplexes and triplex model, whether it's affordability or owner occupancy, that then restrict what people can do with their property and how much profit they can make from it, their alternative is just to go with the large single family house that they can sell to anybody. And so if you want to encourage that product, which is the duplexes and triplexes, it's probably not going to work out for us if we put too many things on it that make them less attractive by limiting what people can do with their property. So that it's just something to consider. And maybe that's something that with enough brain power, we could figure out how to square that circle, but that's a consideration. I also just, Sarah, I wanted to follow up on what you were talking about with the Nexus study and just ask a clarifying question. I know I've heard a lot of people talk about, they worry about inclusionary housing fees because it basically makes the market rate housing that much more affordable or that much more unaffordable. Basically, you're making everything that's market rate more costly. The benefit that you get is the subsidized housing, right? Is the stuff that the inclusionary housing pays for that is deed restricted or that is affordable rentals, but then everything that's market rate, the price is going up. Is that what your concern is?
I just want us to know what the implications are. It's the same thing like I was proposing that you guys were nice enough to put on the table last week. Like we should know, like, gather some data on what the potential impacts of policy X, Y, or Z is. And in this particular case, it's what could be the what could be the knock-on effects of this policy on housing that's not in the deed restricted program, whatever it is. And maybe there'll be, the best news would be there's no impact. That'd be awesome. But I think we should at least try to figure that out. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Lisa, and then really, 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 truly, we're going to wrap up.
Laura, you just kind of triggered a thought in my mind, and I'll just echo what Sarah said, that if it's possible to collect the data, because often if you build it into the design, it's not that hard to pull the data. But if you sort of try and figure it out later, you can. I recommend looking for that. And then I was just going to say that writ large, something that we tend to do in the city of Boulder and Boulder County more broadly is we do a whole bunch of things that in and of themselves are awesome, and we're doing them for really good reasons, and they're great. And then when you put them all together, they start forcing out certain kinds of people or making it impossible to build certain kinds of housing or disincentivizing certain things and so on. So yeah, as we kind of try to fix is maybe the wrong word, but try to study and understand what we're doing with affordable housing and address some of the things that haven't been working as well as we wish they had, I would just strongly encourage it wherever possible to do data gathering and kind of testing, and to look at case studies elsewhere and data from other folks and just kind of see what did it actually end up doing for all that we went in with wonderful intentions. And I'll leave it there.
All right, thank you. Okay. I think we will have given staff a lot of feedback. Hopefully you can pull all the threads together in some coherent way for the city council in your meeting, the meeting that's coming up. And we thank you very much for all that you do for the city and for this presentation and for this project. And then you all are welcome to head to your bedrooms and to go to sleep, and we will go to matters, and then eventually we will adjourn.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate the time. And if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, good night.
All right. Good night. Okay. So now we're in matters. I was told during the agenda setting meeting earlier today that there were no matters from staff, but we only have we have Amanda and Hella left. So I'll ask Amanda and Hella, do you have anything for us?
I do not. I don't have anything. I'm not sure if Hella does.
Yeah, I wanted to just bring up something real quickly. Board members have been sending in questions for staff ahead of time before items are discussed at the planning board meeting, and that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that you all just write your questions and try not to comment in any way on the questions that your fellow board members may have already sent in. Maybe ask a follow-up question, but try to be very clean in that regard, just so that it can't be construed as some kind of discussion.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Anything in matters from the board members? Mark.
I just tonight, as we took the earlier vote on the CIP, I felt a little bad that Lisa and Sarah were in a position that they felt that they needed to vote no on a motion that, for the most part, you guys were in support. The way I heard your comments, you guys were in support of the original staff motion. And so we have, as a board, gotten better at kind of following rules of procedure, making motions, discussing those, voting on those. But we are focusing on amending the main motion. And there's nothing in our rules that I read or in Roberts that prohibit us from having a motion that says we support staff's work regarding the CIP. That's motion 1. And then subsequently, there's a second motion. Planning board, rather than an amendment to the main motion, it's just a motion. And those motions would have passed, but the original motion likely would have passed 6-0, reflecting a truer sense of the board in regard to the CIP. And so I simply point that out and would encourage all of us to think about, are we amending the main motion? Because sometimes an amendment to the main motion is the most pertinent and best way to amend that, and other times just a separate motion it made, and we could let the chair know that, hey, I'm going to be making a motion after the main motion, but it's a separate motion. But there's nothing that says we can't do that and provide council and staff with a truer reflection of our thoughts about the matter before us.
That's very helpful. Thank you, Mark. Laura?
I just want to agree and say that I would have been totally fine with that. There's no reason why these things had to be packaged together. And I, in fact, objected to that in the past of bundling things together into one motion so that I had to vote against something, choose whether to vote against something I mostly supported because I didn't support the amendment. And Sarah and Lisa, I'm sorry that you were in that position. And so I appreciate Mark's suggestion for how we can avoid that in the future, and I'm supportive.
All right, thank you. Kurt?
And I think probably there's a mechanism where we could actually separate it ex post facto, right? If a couple of people are concerned about a particular amendment, there could maybe, I think, be a motion to separate the amendments into a separate motion.
Or withdraw it, maybe withdraw it and.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, we'll try to keep our fingers on the pulse at future meetings and see what we need to do. All right, anything else? All right, it is 9:44. I am declaring this meeting adjourned. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks.